I was watching student presentations in my storytelling class, and a student said, burnout and demoralization aren't the same thing. And I
Mm.
was like, wait, what? And what she explained was,
Oh my gosh, guys. Oh, we're going to have so much fun. My guest today is someone who wears a lot of hats and she rocks every single one of them. We are talking with Danielle, a mom, a business owner, a community volunteer, and a self-proclaimed organization junkie. I love that. Come on. She spent over 18 years in the classroom guiding students through the art of self-discovery, and now she's turning her talents towards helping working moms and all of us do the same. Danielle is the creator of the Plan Goal Plan podcast, and I dare say it's an approach to life because Plan Goal Plan is a thoughtful, joy-filled, and research-based approach to time management and goal setting that helps you skip the pressure and taps into what you're put here to do. That's what I'm talking about. She's a time management coach, a speaker, and an author, and she's all about helping you to create a space for clarity, meaningful work, and those magical moments that actually matter. In full transparency, she's also a coaching client of mine. So I have the honor and freaking pleasure of walking alongside her as she's growing her coaching and speaking business. And I tell you that so I can say, because I know she walks out exactly what she teaches. And I love seeing that. And you will hear that throughout today. She's here with us to talk about how we can plan with clarity, set goals with purpose, and actually live with more joy. I'm so excited for this. I know it's a tall order, but Daniel is up for it. So let's go. Grab a good pen, grab a favorite cup of coffee or whatever you drink, because let's go. It's going to take a little bit of time. Let's get after this. Danielle, welcome to Dream Think Do finally.
thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
My gosh, it's about dang time. I love this. And I've got 1,000 questions. I was telling you before we hit record, we've gotten to know each other over the last couple of years, but I realized having you on the podcast allowed me to ask some questions I've never really asked you before. So I'm super stoked for this. So thanks for being willing to come on Dream Think Do.
Well, Mitch Matthews, you're just the best, and I'm flipping excited to talk with you about all.
Oh, I love it. I love it. So let's dive right in. You call yourself a self-proclaimed organization junkie. I know that is absolutely fact. We have compared notes on to-do list apps and all your different strategies. I love your different strategies, but I've never asked you, have you always been this way, or is this something you became because you needed it?
Gosh, absolutely not something that I've always been. It is,
Interesting.
yeah,
Okay.
it's definitely
Yeah.
something that I stepped into out of necessity.
Yeah. At what point? Because I mean, now you're a PhD, you are a professor, you are an amazing wife and mom, you are a wildly successful podcaster. I mean, your podcast's in the top 1.5% of all podcasts in the world, which is amazing, right? You're a coach, you're a speaker, you got a lot going on, and you do all of it with excellence. So, like, at what point did you say, I got to figure some of this stuff out? Where were you in life when that hit?
Well, so I think that it's important to note that, like, growing up, I was not the smart kid. So you just said, she's a PhD, she's a professor. I say
She's a
momster, right?
smarty. Yeah.
Right, but I was not the smart kid growing up. In fact, like
Interesting.
all of my report cards described me as unique. And
I had that on my parka. I totally get that, right?
yeah,
Like,
we were the
oh,
weird kids, Mitch.
yeah, exactly. That's a veiled put down. Yeah, exactly. That's at least how it felt. So
Yeah.
interesting. So how did your uniqueness show up in school? Because you are one of the smartest people I know. So that's wild. Like you didn't feel like you were in your zone of genius. So how did your genius show up as a kid that might not translate into a typical report card?
Well, I've always been really quirky.
Okay.
I have always liked to perform. And,
Yeah.
I like to make jokes all the time in class. Like, I don't think I was like 30 before I realized that being the class clown isn't necessarily something you should aspire to.
Oh yeah. It's definitely a strength, but it's just a strength in certain things, right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, so when I was like 20 and I said, "Hey, I think I want to be a professor." People were like, "Oh, oh yeah."
Okay, good luck with that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, "But you know what? I love learning, and I've always been
Yeah.
really curious," which I think
Right.
is some of my uniqueness is my incredible curiosity. And so I dove into doing all of the things one does to become a professor. So, I got my master's, I got my PhD, I went to the conferences, I wrote the academic articles and got the academic job and my dream job, even. We were able to come back to our alma mater. I got to have a job where my family lives. My husband's also a professor, which it is really hard to get 2 jobs in the
No
same
kidding.
department at the
Yep.
same university, and we did it, and then we had our first kiddo, which was awesome, and I earned tenure, and I thought, "This is it. Who cares?" So I did, like, all of those things, and then I just
Peace.
felt
Yeah.
incredibly flat, and so,
Interesting.
actually, when I got into time management, some of it was about juggling all the things. Some of it was like, how
Yeah.
do I continue to have this career that fills me because at the moment it wasn't filling me and also be a parent and parent in the way that I wanted to. And so I actually started exploring time management and planning and goal setting in part because I was trying to find myself, not necessarily because I was just trying to be more efficient with my time, but it
Yeah.
was like, how do I start understanding what's going on here? Because I've gotten actually really good habits have been developed in order for me to become a professor and to earn tenure and do all of those things. But the habits alone weren't creating the fulfillment that I was actually
Yeah.
seeking.
Whew, that's huge. We, obviously get to talk to a lot of people about achieving dreams. And I always say most dreams have a back door. Like when you achieve the thing you thought you wanted, oftentimes it might bring fulfillment or a sense of, success, but often you need to keep exploring and saying, "Hey, what's that next thing? Like where is that?" And that's not a bad thing. It can be a little surprising. Like here you would achieve so many of the things you thought you were going for and to go, "Wait, it's not as fulfilling as I thought," or you need something new, right? So I love that you gave yourself permission to say, "I'm going to stay curious. Now I'm gonna point that curiosity to something else." By the way, did you hear I love the quote, one of my favorite quotes from Albert Einstein is, he never thought of himself as all that intelligent either. He just said, "I am wildly curious."
I love that.
And that's I'm like, "Well, that makes sense. You and Albert Einstein hanging out. That just makes sense. Danielle and Albie. Yeah, let's go." I love it. So for you, how did you start that journey of like diving into this stuff? Was it just kinda, "I'm gonna pick up a book. I'm gonna do some experimenting." Like, what was it for you? Where did that start?
Well, because I'm a complete nerd, there are definitely a lot of books, but the
Yeah.
thing that probably really set it off was actually a presentation that one of my students gave. A student
Hmm.
was giving a presentation about her anxiety and a lot of her anxiety around her to-do list, that she was trying to manage her time as a college student, and she was super stressed out and she would just stop making her to-do list because it was freaking her out. And her therapist actually said to her, "Well, you like to craft. Have you ever thought about just like putting stickers on your to-do list?" And she got super into decorative planning. And I was like, "Okay, I am not very artsy." My dad was actually my art teacher growing up, but, like, I hold my scissors upside down. And so I was like, "I don't know if this is my thing, but stickers I can do."
I can do that, right? I'm not gonna paint my to-do list, but I can sticker that thing up. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yes, and so at the time, my anxiety was so high that I was waking up in the middle of the night, and I was like, "Okay, if we're gonna wake up in the middle of the night, let's at least, like, make it fun." So, I started getting out my stickers and my planner, and I started using that time to engage in my planning work. So, I would journal and I would put stickers on it, and I started to notice things, though, about, like, when did I have energy and what was lighting me
Yeah.
up? And I started thinking about my planning as actually a way I was collecting data on myself.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. So that lifelong learner, that curious researcher, you started to notice patterns in yourself, and I do love that, especially you as a speaker. Like there are some speakers that you see and they think they're just the smartest person in the room, and that's why they're the speaker because they need wisdom to bestow on everyone. Whereas you as a speaker, you're a researcher, right? You're like, hey, this is I'm gonna you would be the last one to say I know everything, but this is what I'm learning right now. Just check this out. And then I've seen audiences just lean in when you're teaching, going, yeah, let's go. So I love that. So you just gave yourself permission to experiment. And I do love the fact that you're saying you were, I don't love the fact you were experiencing anxiety that wakes you up. But I do think like, and that's, talking with successful people, it is interesting to hear, a lot of people would look at you, I'm sure at that season of your life and go, oh, Danielle has everything. She is so put together. Everything is in its place. And to hear like somebody like you was experiencing that level of anxiety, my hope is Dream Think Doer that encourages you. If you're there, you're not broken. We just need new systems, right? So I love that you gave yourself permission to try some things. And I'm guessing sticker crazy was fun, but maybe a little messy, all that stuff. But you just kept iterating on that. And I know there's a lot of steps in there, but now, I mean, you have this podcast called Plan Go Plan, your website's Plan Goal Plan. Like, talk to me about Plan Goal Plan, because I am a fan of podcasts with 3 words in the title, and that is good branding because it's easy to remember. But I know that Plan Goal Plan, that's a system. That's not branding for you. That's a system. So walk us through Plan Goal Plan. Why that sequence? Why does that matter? And where's a sticker in there?
Absolutely. So one of the first things that I noticed is that anytime I would immediately jump into goal setting, I would get a few months into things and I wasn't feeling it anymore. And I
Interesting.
noticed this, I had actually gathered together a group of women that we called ourselves the Goal Get 'em Girls, and we would meet once a month and we'd do this work together, and I realized it wasn't just me. Like, we would set these goals, and it wasn't just that, oh, it's the start of a new year, you set a goal and then it like fizzles out, but that like we were actually realizing that the goals that we set weren't actually what we wanted a
Mm,
couple of, months in.
yeah.
And what was happening is people were kind of setting should goals. They were like going to Pinterest, they were going to social media, and they were hearing like, oh, well, this is what somebody's doing for their health. So maybe I'll do this health goal.
Yeah.
75 hard, here I come, right? And then they kind of get into it and they'd be like disconnected from their why because there really wasn't a why other than they saw it and it seemed like what everybody else was doing. And so they thought
Yeah.
that's what they should do. And so what I really found was that was a big issue, and people were saying, "Oh, I set this goal, but I don't have the time to actually enact it."
Yeah.
And so I was like, "Okay, how do we actually first create some sort of a container that creates a foundation of planning practices so that you have those time management skills in place that whatever goal you set, you have those skills ready to roll so that that's
Yeah.
not a barrier. And in the process of doing that, you learn about yourself so that by the time you set a goal, you know that the goal is actually yours. It's
Yeah.
what you need. You're connected to the why. You've anticipated all of the different obstacles that you might run into because you've been paying attention to your own patterns. And
Yeah.
so the plan, goal, plan method starts with planning and creating that foundation. And we do that by creating a ritual of planning.
Huh.
So it's a way I move people through something that I call my Rise Ritual Method. And we're really creating those foundational things. Then we set goals. But then I also noticed that a lot of people struggle both narrowing down and naming which goals are the right goals for right now, and then they struggle to break down those goals. So, we set the goals, but then we also plan again. So now how do we actually break down those goals? How do we actually map it onto our everyday life so that the goals aren't just something that we set it and forget it.
Yeah. That is beautiful. I love it. So for somebody that's maybe feeling that itch, because we have a lot of successful people that listen to Dream Thing Do, and it's that thing of they're wondering, like, and it's wild because successful people often vision and plan and goal set for their teams and for the people in their lives, but they don't often do it for themselves. And especially when it comes to thinking of something new or trying something new, like setting goals on that can be uncomfortable. So for the successful people that you work with, you do help a lot of successful women, but I know men are also very impacted by your podcast. What's one thing you suggest with the starting of the plan goal plan process? Where do you suggest somebody starts if they're even thinking about a new goal? What's a good first step?
So for me, one of the first steps is carving out the time to connect with yourself. And that is where we create a ritual. And for me, the reason I call it a ritual is because habits are awesome. And I love habits. Go habits. But they are actually designed to eventually become unconscious. That's part of the reason we're attracted to them. We want to do them automatically. But what I find is, especially working with high achievers, they find themselves living on autopilot. That's where I was after I earned tenure. I had gotten really good at things, but I was just going through the motions. And so, what a ritual does is a ritual really transforms us from one state to another. Right. So if we think about big rituals like marriage, right? You walk into a marriage ceremony and you're single, and by the end, you have a partner and you have to file your taxes differently. Right? So,
Right.
it actually shifts your identity, not only to yourself, but how other people see you too. And so I think about it as when you sit down to look at your calendar, it's not just about how do I carve out time, right? It's who do I want to be? And how do I turn this into a practice where I'm
Yeah.
present for it? And I'm very intentionally transitioning me to that desired state, that desired identity of the person that I want to become. So and this doesn't have to take that long. I would say, 15 minutes a day is more than enough time to do a little reflective work, connect to yourself, look at your calendar, name what your most important things are to help you step into that identity that you want and go.
I I love that because it is so simple, but yet so powerful and so rare. Like, especially for successful people, because again, a lot of the successful people we help the same kind of person. They'll be the first one to sacrifice for their family and their spouse, for their team, all those things. They kind of put everybody else first. But boy, even 15 minutes is doable for most people, right? We can find that. What does that look like for you? And I do like that's one of the things that I love about you as a teacher and a podcaster and a coach is you are living this. So for you, what does that 15-minute ritual look like for you? Like, how do you get started with it? What is that like? Is it the same thing every day? Does it vary? Does it always involve coffee? Does it always involve a journal? Like, what does that 15 minutes look like for you?
So I will say I have multiple rituals. Probably my most important ones are my morning ritual and then probably my end of the workday ritual that helps me turn off busy brain. But that morning ritual is really the one that grounds me. So I wake up and I'm bouncing. I know that, my husband, he wakes up and he's groggy. He's like slogging through it. I wake up and I'm like, woo, woo,
Let's
and
go. Yeah.
yes. And
Formula One racing. Let's have it. Yeah.
I need to chill out. I need to calm it down and like focus in a bit. And so for me, after, I've gotten a water, made my coffee, I give my dogs a few, I give them a little bit of love. I sit down and one of the first things that I do is I reflect. And I journal. For me, pen to paper is so important because my brain moves so fast that to slow it down by pen to paper is really important. I also love the tactile experience of a really good pen on really good paper.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm right there with you. Absolutely. Yeah.
And so I do a little bit of reflection and I will say that this reflective work does vary a little bit. I might ask myself some similar questions, but depending on, what time of the month it is. So for example, if it's the start of the month, I might have different questions that guide me. If it is a regular Tuesday, I might have different questions, but also some of it is based off of maybe what I'm reading or thinking about. So for example, I've been really reflecting lately on how do we name really precisely how we're stuck. And so I've been doing a little bit of journaling on, okay, I'm feeling burnout. Is it really burnout or is it demoralization or am I disengaged? And getting really specific about that for myself. I also
Interesting.
have other questions like, just like, what do I want to say yes to? What do I want more of? And how do, like, what's lighting me up recently? And so I have some questions like that. And I spend, maybe 5 minutes, that's all, reflecting. If I have a really juicy day, then maybe I'll sit down and I'll like let it be expansive and take a full hour or something. But most days it's like 5 minutes, pen to paper. What's the questions that are kind of, haunting me at the moment and or getting me excited and I write. And then from there I go, how do I want to show up today? And then I do have a daily top 3 practice where I name what are 3 things at the end of today that if I did, I would feel satisfied. I would feel
Mm.
accomplished. I would feel like I showed up as the person I want to show up to. And then I usually have a clear way to end my ritual, which for me, I evoke my senses with a cozy blanket because I'm trying to bring myself down through my
Yeah.
ritual because I wake up with busy brain. I want to focus it in and I want to calm. So I have a cozy blanket that I always use, even in the summer when it's hot. I have this blanket over me and I just close out my ritual by, taking a moment and I kind of, I'll have an I am statement that I think to myself, so I am calm, I am grounded, I am loving, and then I fold my blanket and I put it on my couch, and that signals the end of my
I love that. I mean, the beauty of that is incredible because again, there's so many simple things in that, but there's so many tactical things in that too, and research based because it is interesting how if we truly want deep thinking, weaving in and being intentional about the experiential is wildly important because your whole body gets into it and the ritual of saying, hey, the blanket's got to be there so that your body feels something going, and you start to have that conditioned response of, hey, it is time to just ground. I'm doing this 15 minutes. Like, I love that. And I love so many of those questions that you threw out there. Like, okay, if I'm stuck, let's name it. What does that feel like? What is it actually? Or to be able to say, I loved the question of, like, all right, what are 3 things that I truly want to get done today? If I get those things done, how will that feel? Just giving yourself that permission to dive into that and really feel that. Boy, it's amazing. And again, the neuroscience backs this up that if our brain has a target, it is incredible at problem solving, getting creative, looking for solutions everywhere, all of that. So I love that. And then the ending with the ritual of like the I am statements, the folding of the blanket, all of that helps your whole body to know, okay, now it's time to move into the day. So, oh, so good. I love this. I knew I would. So now let's talk about, we're going to switch just a little bit because this also goes to plan, goal, plan, but it also speaks to how you live what you teach is, you have had seasons where you moved into new things. You achieved success and you moved into new things. For you, what are some key things that allow you to move into new things and get unstuck maybe from old things?
Yeah. So here in my story, right, I realized I was feeling really flat. I started doing this planning and this goal setting stuff, and I was having such a blast with it. And so I created this podcast. And from there, I actually met you, Mitch. And we were sitting judging a speech competition
You have
for
one of
the
my
state of
favorite
Iowa.
experiences. Yeah.
It's so good. It's like so fun to do. You just get to be the hype, I get to be the hype girl for all these high school students. And, you kind of had asked me, "Well, have you ever thought about being a coach?" And I was like, Sure, let's do this." Right?
How does
And
one do that? Yeah.
and I think that was an important moment for me because it started to help me imagine the possibilities of all of the things that I was learning. I am a teacher at heart. I learned something and I want to share it with other people. And how do I find more ways to teach outside of the classroom, outside of the university? And you kind of are giving me permission to explore that. And I
Yeah.
think it's also important to note that I realized that I wasn't going to be able to go through all of this myself, that I needed to have that support system and I needed to invest in having that support with me. And so I think that that was a huge shift. I mean, of course, all sorts of new problems emerge. You're like, okay, I'm going to do this new thing. And then, you know, you all of a sudden unpack all of these other opportunities and you have to make decisions. You definitely walked me through a moment too where I had to learn how to resign from a position.
Yeah.
And and I thought a lot about, well, how do we quit well during that moment of my life? And I think, life just keeps rolling out some new some
New
new
opportunities, right?
yes, new opportunities.
And what I love about your story, and I certainly didn't want to, set up this as an advertisement for my coaching, but I love that I had access to your life in that season. And isn't it amazing how just one question, because I remember asking you that question of like, you've got this podcast, because you had started the podcast really as just as a mechanism to teach what you were learning, to see what might happen. And then we were talking about the podcast, and I was like, have you ever thought about coaching or like getting paid really well for your speaking? Like, and I remember that light bulb, like you grabbed a hold of that and I could tell your brain was like, wait, what? Like, how could that work? And what is that? And we had to think through what that mechanism would look like for you. And I know for you, a part of it was like, well, what would that what would that look like? I'm passionate about this, but is that wrong to sell something that like I've got authority in this now? Is that wrong? And we just talked about being able to say that people really respect what they invest in. And I know for you, the thought of being able to go deeper with individuals on this stuff and really see life transformation, all that it was great to see in your brain just how all of that started to click. And then boy, did you go after it. But yeah, a part of going after new goals, because you are still a professor, but a part of going after something new also was a part of not quitting the university altogether. Like you did think about that, but like, or at least like, what are my options? But you knew something had to change with how you were doing your day job as a professor. And so that, what I love about it is you leaned into it, even though it's like, this is unfamiliar, and unfamiliar often feels wrong. Like your brain often registers new as bad because it's like, wait, this might be uncharted territory. What does that mean? But you started to explore what that might look like. Then you had great conversations with those around you and your leadership. Like you leaned into it in a very transparent way. So talk to us about that, because I think it's true. Like we coach a lot of people on what we call now the authority bridge process of stepping into your authority, but also then potentially stepping out as a coach and a speaker. And a lot of our folks do what you're doing is they are able to adapt their career so that they can do both, and that kind of thing. But talk to me a little bit about what it was like to have like step into a new way to do what you're doing day to day. Like, cause that was some mental gymnastics as well.
Absolutely. And, it's been a wild ride because I
Yeah.
think that when I first started the podcast and then coaching and even thinking about creating online courses and
Yeah.
group coaching experiences, I I was like, okay, this is kind of my side thing. And
Yeah.
then I have the university. And I didn't see how they were connected either because I was trying to keep everything in their nice, neat boxes.
Right.
And and at one point, I was also having just trouble, juggling the time of it all. And I knew that I needed to make some decisions. And I was actually sitting down with one of my deans, and he was like, Danielle, you know that the stuff that you've been doing on your podcast is really aligned with your research.
Mm,
And I was like, really? And he's like, yeah. And it was so funny because I have been studying how to use creative forms of communication to engage in personal and social transformation for the last 20 years. I teach
yeah.
classes like storytelling and identity, performing identity, and it just had not clicked to me that
Yeah.
I was just using different tools to help people connect and create intentionally their
Yeah.
identities. And I needed like my dean to just say that out loud to me. And then he get, having that conversation and me sort of saying, "Hey, I'm doing these things and I want to do both." And it's also lighting up my teaching. Like I
Yeah.
have learned so much through entrepreneurship about how to teach and how to connect, and also like where the gaps are in
Yeah.
the university's curriculum versus like what are the skills and the knowledges and the tools that our students need. And so I was like, this is making me a powerhouse teacher.
Yeah.
Like, I think I'm better at my job now because of this. And when I had enough guts to just take that to my supervisor and say, hey, by the way, I've been doing this thing and I actually think it's a really good thing. And, but I don't know how to do them both. They were like, okay, well, how do we create space for you to do it?
Yeah.
And
Because you had continued to deliver. I think that's one thing I want to explain to anybody that's listening going, wait, she started this business of being a coach and a speaker and a podcaster. Was she dropping the ball on the classroom? And you continued to deliver in the classroom. Like you are a favorite professor on campus. Students love you. They like fight and maim for you, all that, right? But one of the things you did figure out though was that you were maybe losing a little bit of that fire for the classroom. And I love that, this is a story like, and even Jason Ferguson in our last episode, he talked about he was a sales director. And when he started to coach and speak on the things he was living, that actually made him a better sales director too. And I did, like, you could see that fire in you just go, from a maybe a little quieter flame to full roar, because you were lighting up. You were getting excited about the things you were learning. You were bringing to the classroom. You were really looking at innovative ways, and maybe, to do things differently than they'd been done before. And also though, you were continuing to deliver so that, your supervisor was like, didn't have the experience of, oh, this explains why Danielle hasn't been working. Like for your professor to go, oh my, or your supervisor to say, oh my gosh, like she's been carrying this load, but it's been lighting her up. And there's so much crossover. We see that all the time where people are like, this explains why you've been back on fire. That's awesome. And that really, it did open up conversations to allow you to explore new opportunities at the university. And now you're in a really sweet spot because I think in part you started your own thing and you have your own business and all that. Talk to us a little bit about kind of this new season on campus, just how that opened it up. Because I do think people feel like they have to know all the steps before they start. You didn't. And now you've arrived at a whole new season on campus. Just talk to us a little bit about finding that.
yeah, it's been amazing because I have been able to align my teaching so that it aligns with all of the work of my business. So I am teaching things like storytelling and identity. I also teach podcasting, how to start a
That
podcast.
is so cool. I love that. When you told me you were doing a class on podcasting, I'm like, oh my gosh. And I mean, talk about it. It is the future. So
Yes.
I know the University of Northern Iowa is always like, it's the best school on the planet, of course, also a graduate. But I love that, like, that is one of the most important subjects because it is relevant. Somebody could start a podcast immediately. Students are starting podcasts as a part of your class. Like, I love that it was something you probably felt maybe a little tempted to hide. And now you're actually saying, hey, I do it. So I love that. Yeah.
It's
What
so
else?
cool. It's so
Yeah.
cool because, I can tell students, hey, take this class pretty early in your academic career.
Yeah.
And by the end, you could build an audience and have a platform to do your own thing by the time you graduate. Or, like, how much better would it be to make money from your podcast in college than having to, like, slough it at a restaurant or a bar, right? And so, that's been super exciting. And then
That's
from
fun.
there, they actually reached out to me and they were like, "Would you be interested in being a strategic planning fellow out of the president's office?" And in that position, I get to do strategic planning across the university, but I'm also launching here very, very soon something called a strategic growth lab, where I have a cohort of faculty, staff, and administrators who we're going to be doing this identity work around to help them find purpose, autonomy, and mastery in their work. And as they do that, connect them with this larger mission and the strategic plan of the university, because it's a hard time to be in higher ed right now.
Yeah.
People are burnout, people are feeling demoralized, some are disengaged, and I'm just so flipping excited to be in a space where I get to say, let's reconnect with yourself. You have
Yeah.
amazing brilliance and strength. And how do we make sure that the university is fueling that?
Yeah.
And in the process, you're fueling the mission of the university.
So I love it. And I love that you had to start on that journey before you knew any of this would work out, right? Like that is such the picture of I think in the best ways how this kind of thing happens. Most often is you have to start on the journey before you fully know the destination or exactly all the steps that it will take, and this is the example of that. You've just continued to look to that as your North Star of continuing to stay curious, continuing to dive in, giving yourself a chance to experiment. And now you're teaching others, both at the university and your clients, your audience members, all that stuff is so freaking cool. I do want to talk about getting unstuck because I know that's a big passion for you as well. But I want to stay with this for just a second. When you think about like you giving yourself permission to first podcast, then move into coaching and speaking, having your own business, talk to us about because I do think there's a lot of people thinking about doing it, but wonder like how will it work out? And you're the first one to say it's messy, it's hard, but it's amazing, right? Like talk to me about kind of how your current self is grateful for your past self for taking that step.
Oh, so flipping grateful. I mean, it has been probably one of the most amazing personal growth journeys I've ever been on. I feel like I am learning at a rate that I think it's even more than going through my doctoral work. I just feel like I'm soaking up so much knowledge and making connections with people and all of that. And I'm just so grateful that in some ways I was just like, let's have flippin' fun doing this. Like, this sounds like a blast. Let's just like do what Mitch says and see what happens. And then I think what was so wild is that you saw it work.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is awesome. And then I would get to connect with clients and I get to see the amazing, beautiful things happening in their life. And it is such a gift to hold space for people to do that work. Um, it's, I can't even believe that I have that honor, right?
Yeah.
That I get to just bear witness to the beautiful changes that people make in their lives. And so right now I'm just chasing fun. And I'm chasing just how do I keep growing? Like if I take up this opportunity, how am I going to have to expand my capacity to love? And so I just hold on to that.
Yeah. That is so awesome. I love it. And I'll never forget like one of your first clients that paid you really, really well. Uh was also they had one of the biggest breakthroughs. And I remember you going like, I'm getting paid really, really well, like more than you ever thought. And it's totally connected to this person having a life-changing transformation, right? Like, and they were more all in because they'd made that investment, all that stuff. And I just remember like we were on Zoom and you were just like, it was the juxtaposition of getting paid really well, but also getting to have this major, seeing people front row seat to life transformation. And you're just like, this is the best.
Like, how is this real life?
Yeah, right. I love that. Oh, so good. That's so good. So I am so grateful for you. And it's funny because we talk about, we both were judges at this statewide, all state speech competition. And this conversation, you just never know where conversations like this are going to start. So I just love that. Now, starting to get to the end, because I don't want to wrap this up, but I do want to get to one key area I know you are wildly passionate about, and I think it's also a really important subject for Dream Think Doers, because we've talked about it, like highly successful, high achievers, people who get stuff done, people don't see it, but deep down on the inside, the person knows it, they feel stuck. And for high achievers, people who have been successful, getting unstuck is harder because oftentimes we don't feel like we can talk to everybody about it. Sometimes we might even say, all right, I know how to get everybody else unstuck. I just don't know how to do it for myself. And this is a real passion for you because you really do work with a lot of people, again, that have achieved high levels of success, even notoriety, and you help them get unstuck. So if somebody's feeling unstuck, and it's probably nobody else knows it, but deep down inside, they know they're feeling stuck. They're feeling in a rut. What's one of the things that you help them do to start getting unstuck?
So I think that one of the first steps is actually naming your stuckness and getting
Yeah.
really precise about it. So in April, I was watching student presentations in my storytelling class, and a student said, burnout and demoralization aren't the same thing. And I
Mm,
was like, wait, what? And what she explained was that when you're burnout, you are exhausted, you're tired of being tired.
yeah.
And you're thinking to yourself, I can't keep going at this pace. Whereas demoralization is, I know what I need to do and what is meaningful, but the structures and the systems that I'm in are preventing me from doing the work that matters. And those are different problems that require different responses. And I I thought about this in a lot because I've been hearing all of these different, so many of my clients would describe themselves as stuck, but I was recognizing that there were different types of stuck that they were experiencing.
Yeah.
So I went on to LinkedIn actually, and I posted about this, and it went wildly viral in May. And like 1,000 views, 3,000 likes. And y'all, at this time, I only had like 500 followers. Like, I hadn't been on LinkedIn for years. In fact, when I got on, I had a wedding invite from 2008. Sorry, Travis, I didn't come to your wedding. So, like, I was so small. So, for this to go that big, I was like, what's going on? And I spent quite a bit of time then. I actually pulled out all of my different client transcripts and notes, and I started to map out the patterns and the different types of stuckness. And what I found is because you have some people that they don't even know what's next, right? That's how I was, at my tenure moment. I didn't even know what was next. I didn't know what brought me joy. I didn't know what I wanted more of. And so I needed to start from there. But some people do know what's next. They know what their goal is. They just don't know how to follow through. And sometimes that's procrastination. Sometimes that's decision fatigue. Sometimes there's all of these different things that can get in the way. And then you have some people that, are really dealing with, they just feel trapped. Like they don't even feel like they have choice in their life anymore. They need to reactivate their agency. And so what I did is I put all of this together and then created an assessment so that people can really quickly figure out and name with precision how they're stuck, understand how that impacts their planning and their goal setting practices, and then gives them a little micro ritual that they can engage in that is specific to their type of stuckness.
I love it. I love it. So, and I know we can get Dream Think Doers can get access to that as well, which is awesome. So we'll definitely get to that. Give me one example of maybe a surprising stuckness, like one that maybe a lot of people feel, but it really helps them to have it named. Give me an
Yeah.
example of one of the examples of this stuckness.
So my guess is that a lot of dream thing doers are this, which is the overwhelmed visionary. And
Mm,
this is the person that has all sorts of visions, has
yeah.
all sorts of ideas. You see the possibilities. You know the possibilities are there, and you love possibility. But the issue is that there's so many things that you're just bouncing
Yep.
from one to the next. So you can really experience almost being paralyzed by all the possibilities. You can also have overanalysis paralysis.
Mm,
And so what somebody in that stuck stage might need is, and I find especially working with someone, permission to say, not now,
mm.
and to get really focused in. And so that to recognize that this is a huge skill, and it's a strength, but it can also really get in your way.
That's huge. I have a feeling I almost felt a collective gasp when you said paralyzed by possibilities, because we do. We have a lot of visionaries that listen to Dream Think Do, and that is one of those challenges of we see, the thousand things we could do, and probably almost all of them are viable options, right? To then say, of the thousand, where do I start? And to be able to say, okay, you don't have to do them all right now, to give yourself that permission to start with one and really focus in. So I love that. How do people get the assessment? Because I do think that it's an incredibly powerful tool. And I love kind of the naming process, which I know you had people involved in that whole thing. But how do people get access to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So one, I want to say that other than my private clients, your
Yeah.
listeners are the first people that I'm sharing this with. Like I haven't
Come
shared
on.
this yet in my email list. Only my private clients have gotten to experience this so far. So I'm super excited, but you're going to be able to find it at plangoalplan.com/stuck.
That's easy. We'll put that in the show notes as well, but go ahead and say that one more time.
Yeah. So it's plangoalplan.com/stuck.
Stuck. That's perfect. I love it. Oh my gosh. So and that's really plangoalplan.com is where they should start the journey of finding
Absolutely.
you. We'll put your links to Instagram and LinkedIn and all that stuff too in the show notes, but Plan Goal Plan is definitely where they should go. Let's wrap this thing up. I don't want to, but it's time. What's one last like piece of advice or encouragement that you'd give that dream think doer right now that's like, okay, I love time management. I love the to-do lists. A lot of our dream think doers, we got flow charts that are pieces of artwork. Come on. But they're absolutely tapped into what you're talking about here. What's one last piece of advice or encouragement that you'd offer that dream think doer that says, all right, today I want to do today differently?
When you start treating planning as personal revelation, you're going to realize that you actually have time for everything that matters. Because when you know yourself, you know how to discern between what matters and what's a bunch of baloney.
It's very true, right? Yep. When we know who we are and what we're trying to do, decisions do become a lot easier.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Danielle, you are a gift. I so appreciate you. I'm so glad you're in my life and in the world. And I can't wait for Dream Thing Doers to come and get to spend time with you as well. So thank you so much for being a part of this. Thanks for being so generous. This has been fun.
This has been wildly fun. Thank you, Mitch. You're the best.